Hi, my name is Carrie Aborn, and I'm the director of the Center for Career Development at Curry College. Tonight, we have our Career Conversations event with Jay Robinson from the Boston Celtics. Jay is a senior group sales account executive, and he has been with the Celtics for 7 years. Jay and I have something in common, which is that we both have lived in Indiana. And Jay actually grew up in Indiana, and he'll tell us a little bit about that when we start talking with him. And he also played AAU basketball on the same team as current Celtics forward Gordon Hayward. So lots of interesting insight that Jay is going to be able to provide for us this evening. So Jay, welcome and thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you, just about growing up in Indiana, playing basketball? What were your hopes and dreams? What did you think you were going to end up doing when you were younger?
I don't know if I thought that far ahead. I definitely wasn't visualizing working in Boston for the Celtics. I actually grew up an adversary of the Celtics. Wasn't a huge fan at all. Didn't love it because I was from Indy. We're pretty much opposites on that realm. So I never saw myself being a senior tenured rep with the Celtics. But Indiana's much slower paced. I think we talked about that, Carrie, a little bit. So I knew I wanted something that was going to give me a little bit of faster paced living. So I knew eventually I would leave the Midwest. But growing up in the Midwest, it really did give me my foundation. Indiana is a huge basketball state, just like Boston. So I knew if I was going to go and leave, I would want to be probably somewhere that also has a huge passion for basketball. So when the opportunity presented itself for Boston, it was certainly a no-brainer for me. But the way I ended up coming to the East Coast, my senior year of high school, my mom moved to Rhode Island, which is where she's originally from, and she convinced me to move with her. And I love just the diversity of the East Coast. Like I mentioned, the pace, and it felt like home to me, like a second home. So I knew there was a lot of opportunities for me to, want to come on board to the East Coast, and ended up going to school in Providence at Rhode Island College. I was a communications major. And then towards my senior year, I really started to ramp up the networking and trying to figure out how I was going to get involved in some sort of professional sports team, or trying to figure out what I was going to do. During that time in college, I was also working at Bank of America pretty much full time. And I realized banking wasn't the way I wanted to go. So it did give me a lot of great experience that I could put on my resume. But eventually I ended up graduating from Rhode Island College. And my senior year, as I was attending these networking events, I attended one with the New England Revs that they hold each year. It's right at Gillette Stadium. I think it was like a $50 ticket, and you could go see the Revs play afterwards. And essentially it had the Celtics, the Bruins, the Patriots. They were all there, long lines. You really only had time to maybe get in one of those lines to actually meet someone. And I waited in that long line, and because of my experience with the bank, I think they saw that, and they gave me an opportunity to participate in their inside sales program.
Awesome. So can you tell us about the inside sales program? What is inside sales? What does a day look like? What is the job like? And how did you get to where you are today as a
Yeah,
senior?
so yeah, absolutely. So it's certainly a grind inside sales. The way when I came in, we had just gotten rid of the big three. So we traded Paul Pierce, KG, and Ray Allen, and it was in a whole new rebuild. They brought in Brad Stevens. So they needed people to sell this new team. So they brought in 15 college students fresh out of college and essentially said, we'll hire maybe one of two of you guys for a full-time position. And the daily routine of the job was just making 100 cold calls, trying to sell season tickets, which are 43 game packages, or half season is 21 games, home games, or we may even have mini game plans. But it was a grind. It was very competitive. They did end up hiring 5 of us full-time out of the 15 instead of just 1 or 2. But they didn't tell you that until the end of the program. So it was very competitive, but we were all in it together, all coming right out of college. And then once I got hired full-time, I just worked my way up, and yeah, I've been happily there ever since.
I read in your bio that you actually finished up this season in one of the top 10 in overall ticket sale revenue. So what does it take to get to be in the top 10 of ticket sale revenue, where you work?
I think it definitely takes, you have to build a book of business. You can't get there the first year. You're probably a rep, but by season 3 or 4, half your business is renewals, people who are coming back that have come on. And then that way you're just building revenue off new clients. So you have a good foundation with probably 70% of your revenue each year is just returning clients. And then that gives you the ability to know you have that business to go out and just add on each year. And every year that I'm with the team, I just add on more and more new business and try to retain as many of the current clients that I already have. So it's just a playing the numbers game, being as ubiquitous as you can, reaching out to as many different clients as you can. And but it's really just you have to have experience. You have to have some sort of tenure to have a foundation of clients that come back each season.
You know, I think that's probably true of sales in any industry, that when you start out, you know, it's always kind of, you're building up, and it's definitely about relationships and repeat business.
Sure.
So you started a program this past summer, and you had a speaker series. Can you tell us a little bit about the speaker series this past summer, and then how that evolved into the Career Center program that you're offering now?
Yeah, sure thing. So the speaker series that we hosted over the summer, I put that together more so just because I'd seen how impacted college students really were. I know as a senior, if I didn't have the ability to network and go out and meet people face to face, I wouldn't have even went to that event to get a job. So I wanted to just create something that gave at least college kids, if they can't network, at least the ability to ask questions. And I got so many good questions throughout that entire thing. And we averaged about 500 to 600 students per webinar. So it definitely showed that there was a void out there. We hosted it each Wednesday at 11, and each webinar just had a different department. So it could have been social media and digital or marketing, and they would just tell you their Celtics stories. They would tell you what it's like working for the team. And then as students registered for that, they could ask the questions that I would implement some of the better ones into the script. So it was really just designed to give college students free advice over the summer. And then that in turn evolved into the Celtics Career Center, which launches on next Wednesday on October 13th, which is just a continuance of that. So it's an opportunity to really learn firsthand from Celtics front office and how we kind of navigate in the sports industry. So it's really, really beneficial whether you're a current student, you're a recent graduate, even if you're a seasoned professional. I think you can get something out of this 8-week program. There's going to be small networking sessions. There's going to be Q&A. There'll be weekly blogs. So there's a lot you can get out of it besides just the networking. And we're hoping that with this being the first one, that we can continue to grow it, and maybe it gets incorporated in curriculums and things of that nature. But this is the very first time we're doing it, so we'll definitely have to see how it goes.
And if you want to apply for that, how would you do that?
So there's a link I can absolutely send you guys. You just click, and there's 2 different versions. So there's a free version, which is still great. You'll still get access to all the webinars over the summer. You'll still get weekly blogs, and you'll still get certain elements that we'll include. And then there's the MVP package, which is $40, which includes everything that we're going to have for the 8-week program. But I know that I've sent it out already, but I can certainly send it to anyone else who needs it.
We should be able to put it in the chat here, actually, and then that way everyone can access it right now. But we'll also send a message out after this event with the links for everybody that registered. So Jay, for people that end up deciding to participate in the Career Center, which I think is an amazing program and a really great opportunity, what advice would you give to participants as far as like how to get the most out of it?
I would say attend all the ones that are definitely something that you find the most intriguing. If you're into networking, I know it can be a little intimidating, but I think it's great to ask questions. That's the main thing to learn. And a lot of the networking is just to have a willingness to speak and to be heard is huge. And I think, just attending as many as you can and finding the right people in different departments that you can say, I really like what they do, and then following up with those people. I certainly think, especially in sports, a lot of the emails are just someone's first initial followed by their last name and then the team. So like, my name is Jonathan Robinson. My email is just jrobinson@celtics.com. So you guys just take that information and learn people's name, and don't be afraid to follow up with them even after the networking sessions, just to tell them how great the advice that they gave was. So definitely don't be afraid to ask questions and to follow up after these networking sessions.
So Jay, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, and I think it's a great way to reach out to people, stay in touch with people. Do you use LinkedIn in your role? And, what advice do you have around LinkedIn in general?
Yeah, I definitely use LinkedIn often. I think first of all, it's just a great way to sell yourself. It's the easiest way, especially in the middle of a pandemic, to continue to network. I think it's good if you can create content. If not, then just I would say connect with many people in the industry that you're interested in going in. But it's an excellent tool. I've used it for everything for personal networking to generating different leads through LinkedIn. So it really is useful in all facets.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Something I want to make sure I ask you about is another thing that you mentioned to me is that you had the opportunity to actually watch game film this summer with basketball operations department. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a grind. It's watching a lot of high school prospects on grainy AAU film from these tournaments that they're playing in, and you have to. A lot of it was keeping track of the box scores and focusing on one particular player, but it's certainly a grind. It's definitely not as fun as it may sound because you're just watching hours and hours of kind of grainy basketball footage, and a lot of times they want you to keep track of the stats, but then you can't even see like the scoreboard because it's like an AAU tournament or a collegiate tournament. So it was certainly fun. And for me, it's just, that's kind of where I want to steer my career towards, is more the basketball operations side. So being able to do that project and doing it as fast as I can, that was my main focus. Like, okay, you gave me this amount of work, then I'm going to try to do it in half the time that it normally takes people. So yeah, it took me a month straight of probably just watching about 6 hours of footage every day doing that project for them, but it was totally worth it.
That is so amazing. And it sounds like that's what it takes to really be able to continue to advance your career at a place like the Celtics, kind of going above and beyond, asking for extra projects. Um, can you tell us about any other like stories about other people that you've heard of, things that they've done to climb the ladder?
Climbing other stories. Well, I know you guys have noticed like the virtual fans and that whole thing once we were in the bubble. So we did have a girl, Kristen, in our marketing team. She really took over that whole project for our team. She made sure our sections were filled, and that's not her primary job at all, but she just kind of stepped up to the plate in that. And she got a lot of recognition at our last all hands meeting. So I'm sure she's taken the necessary steps to continue to move up in her career just by crushing the virtual fan experience. That's probably the first one that comes to mind as far as recently.
Thank you. That's a great
Mm-hmm.
story. So I have plenty of other questions to ask you, but I want to open it up to questions from our student and alumni participants. Don't be shy. You can unmute yourself and just speak out, ask a question. You can
Hi,
also.
Jay. My name's Mackenzie. I'm a current senior here at Curry. So obviously now everyone knows that the job market is going down, down, down. And what's your advice for seniors who are kind of finding dead ends when they're taking the advice of just applying to everything? What would you give a recommendation for that?
I mean, it's definitely tough. Obviously this is such a unique year for college seniors. That's a lot of the reason we started a lot of the programs we did, because me personally as a senior, I didn't really start looking for jobs until I was a senior. So if I was in the same position as you guys, I would definitely feel frustrated. Obviously it's very competitive right now. You have to be patient. I would say just continue to network, continue to plant seeds. Like you said, continue to apply for jobs, but I guess there is no great answer right now except for continue to network and do whatever you can to kind of put yourself out there. I would say if you want to work in sports, this is a great time. A lot of people who work in sports like me, we're working from home. So you have an audience that's available. We're not we don't have the excuse that we're getting ready for preseason right now. We're not getting ready for anything. So we're home, we're available. So the people that you want to get in touch with, it may be a little harder next year, even though jobs are available. So now's a good time just to build relationships, I think, with people and to reach out because they're home and they're available. So that would be my advice for that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We had a question in the group chat from Shane asking, how did you get involved in working with sports?
So I knew working at Bank of America for 3 years, that wasn't my calling. I always loved sports, and it was really that inside sales program. So I would recommend anytime you guys see any kind of programs like that, it's definitely a high risk because you don't know if you're going to get a job at the end of it, but you will get referrals. You will get a chance at other opportunities as well. So it really started with me with inside sales. Again, it was an 8-month program. It started on June 1st and it ended in February, right, with the NBA All-Star game. So that program taught me a lot, and it really was what got my foot in the door.
And then kind of building off that last question, what advice would you give to someone like trying to kind of pivot their career and try to make like a career change? That's something you're trying to do right now, trying to get back basketball operations. So you might not be able to fully answer that, but what would you recommend or suggest?
I would say, you have to just throw yourself out there. Like, they weren't going to just come to me and say, hey, do you want to watch footage and advance your career? You have to like reach out. You have to be proactive. So I've been bothering those guys for last couple of seasons. Like, listen, I want to be closer to the GM. I want to be closer on that side. I've done a lot of the business. I want to get more to the basketball side. So I've been planting these seeds for years now, and I think it's finally coming to fruition. But you have to be patient, because I can't just say, hey, I want to work in basketball ops and it'll happen. So I would say just throw yourself out there, make it known that that's what you're kind of wanting to do, because people can't just read your mind. And you just keep planting seeds, and eventually I think, if you put out the right energy, eventually someone will reciprocate that and you'll get your opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? So Jay, you mentioned a few times that you worked at Bank of America and it wasn't a good fit for you. Can you talk a little bit more about what you did there, and what aspects of the job that you liked, what aspects that you didn't like, any skills that you developed that were transferable to where you are now?
For sure. So even at Bank of America, I started off doing customer service. I was really just getting yelled at a lot on the phones, but it was the equivalent to making 80 to 100 calls a day. So the Celtics, when they saw that I'd already had that experience, because there is a lot of phone fatigue with making 80 calls a day, but I was used to doing that, getting yelled at for money. So certainly I could do that to sell basketball tickets. So it was pretty transferable in that sense. And then I started doing more of the quality assurance and grading my peers on how their calls are going. And it just wasn't a passion of mine. Listen to people talk about money in their bank account. So I knew it wasn't for me, but without that experience, I don't think the Celtics would have given me an opportunity for sure.
And, inside sales and making cold calls, it isn't for everyone. You have to deal, as you mentioned, with a lot of, people that aren't so happy that you called them. So how do you get through that? How do you, navigate making these calls to people that maybe, where it's unsolicited, and, how do you keep yourself going? How do you keep yourself motivated?
Well, I'm very competitive, and sales brings out the competitiveness in you because it's so tangible. It's not like a different department. You can see where you stand around the league and in your office. So for me, just the competitiveness to not trying to be second to someone else on my team kind of drives me. So it's certainly just most of the competitiveness, I would say.
That's definitely something that anyone who's played sports, develops that competitiveness. And so sales ends up being a really good, career path for athletes.
Yeah, and when it comes to cold calls, my whole style is just to be conversational, and to ask as many probing questions as we can. A lot of times in sales, they say it's like an 80-20, 70-30. You should be listening 70% of the time and only talking 30%. And if you're asking the right questions, that actually does happen. So I just try my best to ask open-ended questions to get them to open up about themselves. And then eventually you kind of start to go in for the kill, like what's your budget and who's the decision maker. But for me, my style has always been conversational. I've never been good at reading a script that someone says, this is how you should sell tickets. For me, I can just be myself. But the main thing is just being able to have the ability to keep a conversation going once you have someone on the phone. And the best way to doing that is just to ask the right open-ended questions.
Thank you. Other questions from the group? So another question I have, Jay, is about the COVID pandemic. So when that hit, what was it like in your office? And, when did this decision come down? When did you find out that you were going to have to start working from home? And then how did your work change working remotely?
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget it because if you guys remember, Rudy Gobert on the Jazz was the one who kind of was the first one to test positive, and he got in trouble for like touching microphones and all of that stuff. But our last team we played was the Jazz. So when it came out, all this stuff was happening so quick. So when they found out Rudy Gobert tested positive, they called anyone who was down by the court that game. I happened to be down by the court doing the Anthem Buddies experience where I lined the kids up in front of the players. And I was over on the Jazz side. Mike Conley actually is from Indianapolis, who plays for the Jazz as a point guard, and he went to the same high school as me. So I was actually talking to him during that game. And then the next morning they said, don't come into work. We're not allowing anyone to come in who had any close contact with players. And then it went to no one's coming in. So it all just kind of happened overnight. And for us, I think it was a good thing a little bit, because it did kind of force the Celtics to be a little bit more with how a lot of companies are, being able to work remote. This wasn't a company that really just allowed their sellers or anyone to just say, I'm going to work from home. We were a very old school, come in every day. And now I think they see that, there is a lot of value especially for a seller like me, to be able to just work. And, I wake up early. So if I can start my day at 7 a.m., it's even easier for me to do that than having to drive into the city and deal with all of that. So I think it impacted us a lot, but I think it opened the eyes of a lot of leadership that, going forward, even though we just spent millions of dollars on a brand new front office for ourselves that we're going to be moving into next season, it's still good to keep this hybrid model going where, maybe you work 2-3 days from home and then you go into the office, which is what a lot of companies are doing now anyway. So I think the pandemic kind of showed the Celtics that that's just the way that society's going anyway with technology.
It was a big shift for us in higher education as well, having to go from in-class instruction and then shifting to being able to learn online. And I hear a lot of students saying that they really don't enjoy learning online and doing work online. But the reality is that our students that are going to be graduating may be going into jobs that by May, we don't really know, but could potentially still be remote. So I think building the skills to work online and be able to learn online is actually going to be really important to be able to demonstrate to potential future employers. Is there any software that you started using during the pandemic when you started working remotely? Was there anything different that like your team did to stay in communication?
We certainly use Teams chat a lot more than we probably did in the previously, but all of the systems that we utilized in office, we pretty much can take home with us. So our ticketing system is called Archix, is what we use to sell our tickets on. We use a software system called CRM to consolidate and keep all of our season ticket members and our group clients. And that's how we just kind of keep track of where we're at with all of our clients, is a program called CRM.
And
we have
we have a question in the chat.
Yep.
Go ahead, Liz.
Questions about what did you major in through college, and how did that, to further that question, how does that lead you where you are? Has it had any strong effects or otherwise?
I started off freshman year as a political science major, changed pretty quickly out of that, and I just did communications, which was good. I think there was a lot of people who enjoyed sports in my particular major at Rick. I did the sports radio show. I had my own sports radio. I wrote for the school's sports newspaper. And I enjoyed communication. It had a lot to do with kind of the broadcasting realm, which I thought maybe I'd go into, doing a little bit more of the ESPN stuff. My career didn't kind of take me that way. That was kind of the reason I signed up for that particular major. But as far as communication, I'm sure it helped my skills there as well.
I'm sure you work with a lot of people who have studied many different majors in school, but still ended up, somewhere maybe they didn't expect to be. I always say, the world outside of higher education isn't made up by majors. You can find anyone in any business that has studied any major. So what's your advice to students who maybe are still thinking about what to major in, and, who are looking for a potential career in sports management?
I would say definitely, especially if you're a freshman, sophomore, keep switching it up if you don't like something until you can get a feel for a different major. So while you have that time, you might as well utilize it to try out different majors while you can. And then once you do start to figure out that you want to go into sports, it is very competitive. So the earlier you can figure that out, the earlier you can start kind of taking the necessary training and courses that can steer you in that direction. you can start networking, and you can create a teamwork online to see what sports jobs are available. And you can just kind of have the mindset like, all right, I know I want to work in sports. These are the steps you have to take. I probably didn't realize it until my senior year. And that's when I started doing a lot more networking and really polishing up my LinkedIn, and just putting myself out there.
Jay, you talk a lot about networking, and it's definitely something that's gotten you really far, and it's going to continue to propel you. Can you kind of break that down a little bit? I talk to a lot of first-year students who don't really even know what the word really means. They hear like, oh, you need to network, but can you break it down? Like, what does that actually entail?
For sure. So from a college student perspective, I would say you're never too forward to reach out to someone you don't know that's in an industry that you want to work in. I think that's a great way to get on someone's radar, especially in a business like this, where a lot of times it's about who you know. And if you don't know anyone, you have to go out and meet people. So I would say, don't feel hesitant to reach out to someone. Don't think it's too forward. And then if you're not getting responses right away, I wouldn't get discouraged. I would say it's great to be persistent. Sometimes you might reach out to someone and they overlooked it, and you sending them a follow-up, they were a reminder like, oh, I need to reach back to that person. So I say, it's perfectly reasonable as a college student, if you want to work in sports, to make those connections. And you can reach out 2 or 3 times to someone to try to get on the radar. The worst case scenario is you just don't hear back from them. I would say along those lines, though, when you are reaching out, make sure that it's not just some generic copy paste email that you're sending out to everyone. It's certainly about the quality of the emails as well. So study the person you're reaching out to, the industry they're in, and just try to make it as a thoughtful, genuine email as you can when you're networking. So it's a combination of getting yourself out there to as many people as you can, but at the same time, you're having to make sure that what you're saying is actually worth responding to.
And when you're crafting that email and thinking about, what to say to someone, you're doing some research to find out a little bit about them. What is the ask? When you're trying to network and send that initial email, what would the content be besides introducing yourself and maybe something that you admire about the person?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it always has to be like an ask or like a next steps, but I think a lot of times it's just about planting the seeds, and just maybe as a college student, you're just reaching out, letting them simply know, hey, I'm doing a lot of networking right now. I see that, even if it's not sports, it could be a different industry, but just studying the industry. Like a lot of days I'll study the Boston Business Journal, and if HubSpot acquired 500 employees, I might reach out to them about that and say, well, what are you guys going to do anything for employee entertainment and things like that? So I think you can just do your homework on the person and just try to have a conversation. I don't know if you necessarily need to leave it with some sort of next steps to it. More so just kind of putting your name out there and being candid, letting them know, listen, I'm really interested in working in sports. I see you've been doing a lot of great things in this field, and I just wanted to introduce myself. And maybe even leaving it open-ended gives them more of an ability to respond to. Whereas if you ask them something and they don't have the answer you're looking for, then that kind of cuts the conversation off. Because I do get those emails where it's just like a resume attached, and someone say, hey, I'm looking for work. And I'm like, I can't just hire you off of this email. So it's just more so, to me, it's just, I always get back to people, even if it's not the greatest email, but it certainly helps if you put a little bit more thought into it.
That is such great advice. And I really, again, coming back to LinkedIn, I think with LinkedIn, it's a great networking tool, because in the initial message, the ask is just, can you connect with me? Can you accept me as a contact? And, that can be a good start. And then following what that person does, and then, when they post something or share something, you can comment on that, and that can, it can build from there.
Absolutely.
We also talk a lot in our office about doing informational interviews. So that's contacting someone and asking them if you can get on their calendar and actually spend a little bit of time interviewing them about their job, about their career path, kind of like what we're doing here tonight, but more of a one-on-one. In your experience, have you ever asked anyone to do an informational interview? And have you found that people are willing to do things like that? Do you think people in your organization are willing to do informational interviews? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, my senior year, I was hitting up everyone just to try to get some sort of interview with them. So I certainly think there's a lot of value in that. You're learning at the same time, and you're also planting seeds and networking. So it's certainly 2 birds in 1 stone by doing informational interviews. And I think it definitely gets you closer to where you want to be, for sure.
Jay, I know that a lot of people, and I see there's a question in the chat. I'll get to that in just a moment. I know that you look at a lot of resumes, you look at a lot of people's cover letters. You've really helped a lot of people, in your time with the Celtics to be able to, make some referrals. What are the things that you see in resumes and cover letters that are like, that you like to see? And is there any don'ts, do's and don'ts for resumes and cover letters, anything that you see in general?
Yeah, I would say with resumes, you should definitely keep, if for whatever the job you're applying for, probably have the most relevant information towards that job somewhere towards the top. Resumes that are cleaner, normally like they have some sort of flow to them. Like if you have one job that was like 8 years ago and then the next job is something completely random, it creates a bad flow when you're reading them. And if you're reading a lot of resumes throughout the day, you're really just looking for the cleaner ones that are easy to read. You can understand what this person's background is, and just make it as efficient as you can. I know it always changes. People saying, should it be 1 page? Should it be 2 pages? I guess it just kind of depends on where you're at in your career. But just starting off, it's probably best to be as efficient as you can and just kind of have a clean one-sheeter with your experience. And then your cover letter, go all out for that. That's really who you are, and it tells your story. So it's just about you. So personalize it and give as much relevant information as you can in that cover letter. And again, it just goes back to don't just use some generic template that you found and really make it about you. It's going to take time. It's hard to write a good cover letter because you're really just speaking about yourself. But it's worth it. And if you put the right amount of time into it, it'll show. I enjoy reading people's covers letters when I can tell they put a good thought into it. And it definitely will increase your chances of just getting a hit back for sure.
Thank you. So we have a question from Aiden in the chat. Can you talk about what game days are like for you with your job with the Celtics and the perks of your job?
Yeah, so game days are extremely long. We have a normal 8:30 to 5:30 schedule. That's set in stone irregardless if it's a game night. And then you guys know the Celtics schedule. We typically normally we play at 7:30 at night. So realistically, you're at work at 8 o'clock, and then the game that you're working doesn't start until 12 hours later. So it's a long day, and then you have to be right back the next morning. So they're certainly long days, but they're fun. They really are fun if you enjoy sports. It's kind of like gives you a second energy once you do get to the arena. Our office is right next door. So it's fun. Like normally around 4 or 5 p.m. they'll cater dinner for us on game nights. So everyone will go and they'll eat dinner. And then for me, I do a lot of customer service in the games. So a lot of mine is just, dotting my I's and crossing my T's and getting ready for the game. With group sales, we always have those on-court fan experiences. So each night, this is every night, we're offering 2 pregame slots for a group to either play on the court or do some sort of dance routine. We're offering the anthem experience where we're lining up kids in front of the players. There's a halftime scrimmage. Sometimes there's a meet and greet after the game. And that's why I like group sales too. There's just a lot of events that I plan throughout the season. A Dominican Heritage Night. There's all types of things that you have going on. It's very fast paced. And it's certainly fun. But I won't lie, it is certainly a grind as well.
So, question. So you're like the head of group sales. So, is there not like an entertainment department? I guess that would be in charge of like different theme nights and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We do have a live events department. It's certainly grown over the last few years. It seems like we've really taken an investment in the in-game experience. Mm-hmm. So we've added all types of things through that live events department. So it's certain if something you're interested in, that's definitely a good field. A lot of these NBA teams realize that you have to create an experience in the atmosphere. The Celtics used to just be able to kind of hang their hats on being the Celtics, and the old guard didn't even have air conditioning, but it was the Celtics. Now people with technology and being able to watch games from home and all other different ways, you really have to create more than just basketball to get people in. So the importance on live events and really creating something that people want to come to that they can't get from their TV sets is something that there's really, really been a big emphasis that's the NBA going on. So that's actually a really good question.
Going off of Orlando's question, so I've had my heart set in the entertainment industry for the past 2 years now, and obviously with COVID, that has kind of come crashing down on a lot of people looking towards that industry. How has the Celtics adjusted, and are there still opportunities, even if you guys are dealing with COVID?
Yeah, so I mean, we've adjusted just doing things like the virtual fans, anything we can do right now. I mean, we haven't had an actual home game to do any kind of live entertainment since this all happened, but I'm assuming that department is just they're focusing on what adjustments they'll have to make, and I'm sure they're having a lot more conversations about what it's going to look like in the arena next season. So I think we all just kind of have to be patient. Though, 2021, we're assuming the season will ideally start probably in January or February of next season. And eventually we'll get back to normalcy. It's tough to really say what adjustments live events has made this year besides just kind of hunkering down and waiting for brighter days, I suppose.
Looks like Jacob, you have a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you for taking the time tonight, Jay. What would you recommend for like a student going from their senior year of college to the workforce? Like, is there anything you would have done differently, like adjustments wise? Because it is a pretty big adjustment, in my opinion.
I mean, it's even harder for you guys. My advice last year would have just been go and get seen and go to a million networking events like I keep harping on and just doing that. For you guys, you just have to rely a little bit more on technology. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, all of the professional sports, we're all home right now. We're not doing our normal 70-hour work weeks. I'm home. So you have a captivated audience. You have people who now have more time to put together a career center and to put together these things. So I think take advantage of the fact that we're not running around like we normally are and just put yourself out there as much as you can. I know any college students that reach out to me right now, I'm going to get back to you. So just play the numbers game. You just have to kind of just keep putting yourself out there. Not everyone's going to get back to you, but I would say now's the best time to actually get a hold of people.
Awesome. Thank you.
Looks like James has a question.
Yeah. So Jay, were there any like mentors that you had or like what kind of supervision or advice or leadership did you kind of get when you first joined the Celtics or first kind of entered the working world? That kind of, because I know everybody has their own mentors, and especially in a industry that you're in. I'm just curious, like what kind of people act as your mentors?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So when I started in inside sales, our manager for that, she essentially was like a teacher to us. I mean, because we all had so many questions. We had never done sales. None of us really knew how to make a cold call. So there was just so many questions that got asked. And then like my relationship with her name is Jill. We still talk all the time. I still reach out to her for advice. And she's always been a mentor I had. And then the Celtics actually started like a mentor program when I was in there. And I got paired with our legal counsel. She actually works for the Miami Heat now. And we've always maintained a relationship and had that connection. And I can always like her for advice. So it's good to have mentors for sure. They really do keep you grounded. They give you good perspective on things and they've been there before. So it's just good to have someone that can give you advice.
And Jay, we have a question in the chat, which is, can you talk about connections you've built with other NBA teams and their organizations?
Yeah, I mean, especially this summer, because we were all home, we made it an emphasis to really finally like just network with a lot of NBA teams. I probably spoke with about 14 different teams over the summer, just on a Zoom call like this, connecting with them, sharing best practices, talking about what their vision is for next season. Some teams were like fully ramping up, like still selling, and other teams were like, well, we're going to hold off for right now. But I know a lot. The thing with the NBA, it's such a bubble. Like everyone kind of, you get to know a lot of people working in the NBA. So I probably have connections with over half the teams in the NBA at this point.
Are you involved with any professional associations for your role?
I'm not, no.
Are you aware of any professional associations in general for working in professional sports?
One that's really taken off over recent years is WISE, which is Women in Sports. They have a huge organization that they've really pushed to get more women working in sports, which is awesome. So I know I don't think we have a couple of girls on this call, but that's a great organization for sure. Because they're not just trying to help you get a job, they're trying to help you to be a leader and to advance in your career in any form or facet. So that's one off the top of my head is a really good one, Women in Sports.
other questions before we begin to wrap up? Well, while you're thinking about any final questions, I just want to mention that the Center for Career Development is here to help all of you to find jobs, to network, to brush up your LinkedIn, your resume, your cover letter. That's what we do. And we have a new system called Handshake, and Handshake has hundreds of jobs, internships, opportunities, and if there's whatever you're looking for, wherever it is, let us know so that we can help you get connected. I also want to just reiterate and recommend the Career Center that Jay has put together, this program, which is starting next week. It's a really awesome opportunity. This is the first time they've ever done it. And when I heard about it, I got an email and I immediately reached out to Jay and I was like, I want to hear more about this because I think a lot of our students would be interested. So that's why we did this event, to help spread the word about this Career Center program. Liz just linked the address for the Career Center program. You can register. There's a free option, and then there's also an option which is $40. For the free version, you can watch all of the webinars, and you can still, reach out to those people and let them know that you saw the webinar, and that, and make a comment about something that they said and let them know that you want to connect with them. So that's one way to use it. And then if you are able to pay the $40, then you can be on the live calls and be able to ask live questions. So Jay, we just had another question come in. This is one usually people really don't like to talk about, but I do think it's helpful because there's a lot of curiosity for people who are college age, thinking about, what are salaries like out in the real world? What does that look like? So anything you feel comfortable sharing about salaries.
Yeah, with sports, with me, I'm in sales. So, I guess it depends on the team you work for. I can't speak for a team that may not be doing as well and doesn't make the playoffs each year. It's such a range. It really is a huge range. For me, I'm speaking from a sales perspective. I would say maybe about 30 to 40% of my salary is a base salary, and then the rest is commission. But I like that. It allows me to kind of control where I'm at to get closer to like six figures and around that range. But it depends on the department. I really can't speak. I don't know how much everyone makes in different departments. I would say marketing is typically, I don't know, around 50 to 70. These are just me kind of guessing where they're at. I'm not 1,000% sure what everyone makes, but sales is a reason I like sales for a first-class team, is because you can actually make some good money in sales. But yeah, it's kind of tough for me. I don't know what everyone makes, unfortunately.
I will mention there's a website called Glassdoor, and you can go on there, you can register yourself. You have to share information about yourself, but then you can actually see what other people share as far as salaries that they have in their positions within certain organizations. So that's a resource that's out there. It's free to be able to look, to kind of get a sense, at least, as far as salary ranges. Liz just linked that website on this chat.
Jay, I just have one last question.
Mhm.
Have there ever been a time in your career path, I know you said you transitioned from a bank to the sports industry, have there ever been times where you've hit complete roadblocks, either mentally, physically, whatever it may be, and have there been times that that's happened to you, and how have you gone around them, and who have you reached out to, or what have you done yourself to get around those?
Yeah, it was certainly, like I kind of mentioned earlier, I didn't enjoy the bank. So there was certainly a roadblock just going there for 3 years, getting that experience under my belt when I didn't really enjoy it from day one. But it was certainly the experience I needed to actually be seen, because there's so many kids who are applying for these students who are applying for this job. So I certainly hit some fatigue with that job. And then even in inside sales, when they tell you, listen, there's 15 of you guys, and we're only going to hire one of you, there's a lot of stress that comes along with that, especially if you're not number one on the sales board that week, and you're seeing a lot of your peers are making sales to family, friends, and things like that. So there's a lot of frustration that goes into it, with it being so competitive. But for me, I just try to just be consistent every day. I never showed any fatigue. You don't want to show that. You have to keep that professionalism. There would be people halfway through the program that you could start to see them like losing it, and they would call out and they would just come in and they just would be a little bit more pessimistic. And I was actually driving from Providence every day, so it wasn't even like I was up the road either. And I just didn't find any reason to complain because that wasn't going to get me anywhere. I just try to maintain this level of energy every day as if I'm happy to be here for 8 straight months for a job that you may or may not give me. So there's a lot of stress that goes into that, especially right out of college. You want to have a job. So to say for the next 9 months, you may or may not get one, there was a lot of stress that went into that.
Thank
Well, it
you.
sounds like you made the most of it. Other questions as we are wrapping up?
And then one other thing I would say is for there's a lot of great opportunities in minor league and the AAA. I know so many of my colleagues who are working for the Celtics now or the Patriots now who had to go and work for the Providence Bruins or the Pawtucket Red Sox or any of those AAA, because that's the exact experience that a professional sports team is looking for. If you're coming right out and you're applying for a job and you've already done season tickets, even if it's for a smaller market team, it's pretty transferable what the concept of the job is. So I would say definitely don't turn away opportunities that might not be as what you want because it's not the Celtics. And you certainly have to be open-minded to even relocating as well, and just to advance your career. But I always say those AAA and those minor league opportunities are great ways to get your foot in the door.
And Jay, once the pandemic is over, at some point, we know eventually things will get back to normal, but it will be a new normal. What's your prediction for like working from home and how things will be different in the future?
I think we'll take all of the good that came out of this and combine it with the good that we had going into this. So like I mentioned, maybe, if we had a double overtime game, maybe the front office will say, you know what, you guys have the full capability to do the same thing at home. Stay home tomorrow morning instead of coming back in at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I think everyone's learning what good can come out of this and going into next season. And I'm certainly hoping that we get to the point where we can have 18,000 plus fans back in the arena. Will that be anytime soon? No. Probably maybe not until next fall. So I think we just have to be patient. Nothing is going to go back to full normalcy. But I think there's a lot of good that came out of 2020 anyways that we can apply to 2021.
Thank you. Jay, is it okay if we share your email address in the chat for those who are on the call?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I
great.
have a question. Could you talk about what off seasons are like for you, like work-wise and what you do?
Yeah, off seasons becomes a little bit more of a normal, just 9 to 5. We're still required to be there 40 hours a day. For me, it's just a lot of dealing with renewals. I'm trying to keep my renewal percentage at 90% plus, making sure all the people that came out last season want to come out and getting them to put some money on file, like a deposit, to ensure that they get their priority for next season. So a lot of it for me, from a sales perspective, is finding the balance between renewals and then new business throughout the summer, which when you're doing that, it actually goes by pretty quick. Normally, like if you're a good team, you're going to go play until about May or June, and then training camp starts back up in September. So you really only have a few months of the off season before it's time to kind of ramp back up again.
Looks like Jacob has a question.
Yeah, it just made me think of a quick question. What are you doing to almost like please your customers? Because I mean, you're kind of looking into the unknown here with the COVID, and like, would you want to come back and have season tickets? Like, how are you marketing that to your customers?
Well, we are certainly lucky that we have such a promising young team that is chasing championships every year. So a lot of season ticket members don't just look at it as an enjoyable experience, but you're also giving it up on an investment. Because you do have the ability to resell your tickets for some of those big, you can make money off your tickets in a lot of cases, but I think, certain organizations may have a tougher time than others. If you're dealing with this crisis and your team wasn't very good going in, it might be a little bit harder to retain those clients. Whereas us, we were one of the Final Four teams and going into the playoffs, so we can still sell like we're chasing championships, and you don't want to give up on your seats that you have going forward. So I'm certainly fortunate to be in an organization that we can kind of sell that. I suppose if I wasn't, then it would be a lot more that you'd have to do customer service wise. I know during these months, I've done a lot of wellness checks with my clients, not even reaching out for anything business wise, but just to check in and see how they're doing throughout this whole crisis. Just because I don't want it to be a situation where the last time I reached out to them was over a year ago. So a lot of it is just maintaining the relationships I've built over the last 5 years. And the best way to doing that is to keep in touch. So for me personally, I've just made sure that even if I don't have anything to sell you right now, we're still communicating in some form or facet. So with this career center, I make sure all my big college clients get access to it. With youth basketball, I'm making sure that they're watching any junior Celtics videos that we're putting out there. And I always just find organic ways to stay in touch with my clients. So it's not just a situation, again, where I haven't communicated with them for months and months.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, well, we are just about out of time. So I want to say thank you to everyone for participating. And Jay, especially thank you to you for taking your evening to talk with our students and alumni about your career path and about the work that you're doing with the Celtics and this Career Center program that's starting up next week. I hope everyone on this call will take advantage of this opportunity. And keep us posted. Let us know how it's going and what you think. And definitely reach out to Jay. His email address is in the chat.
Yeah, don't be shy, guys. Don't be shy. I appreciate it.
And he's willing to look at anybody's application documents, give you some feedback, make sure it's clean. And then
Thank you.
yes, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and end now, but we'll stick around for a few more minutes if anyone wants to talk to Jay off the recording.